Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I got Ryan Hall here, formerly of AC Dallas, currently of Los Angeles Infamous, also Arc Anodizing. One of my favorite players from Texas. We got a decent amount to talk about today here as we're setting things for 2021. So mark your calendars here, end of this month, April 30th to May 2nd. We got the first major of the NXL season coming at you as we are going to start to see all this crazy drama that's going on with all these pro teams. Who's actually going to be good this year? Who has any idea? I don't know, man. I really feel like it's kind of up in the air. Ryan, that's one of the reasons I want to get you on here and talk about it. So let's just dive into it right away. Obviously, AC Dallas fell apart this year. You're now on Infamous. Let's just dive right into that conversation right away. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about, what happened with AC Dallas. I want to talk about Infamous currently. I want to talk about your anodizing company. I want to talk about 10-man paintball because you love that, and Infamous is badass at 10-man paintball. But let's just dive right into what happened. I just feel like we might as well just get into the deep end immediately because that, I still to this day don't exactly know what the hell happened to AC Dallas. I mean, it's such a mystery because that team was so good for so long, making it to the finals, not winning tournaments though. And then with the COVID lengthened year last year with those two events, it just seemed that was kind of the coffin nail for the starting lineup. We've had TJ Danner on. We've had Matt Jackson on. We've discussed this a little bit. Now we got you on. And again, we got a lot of time to discuss this stuff. But let's just, what happened, man? Like how did this state of affairs come to be what we're talking about currently?
Yeah. So just to clear the air, there was no single thing that happened, no giant blow up, none of that. Like, we're all good friends and it's all good. With AC, what people don't realize is that the caliber of players that we had on that team can go and get paid and paid well on all these other teams. Yeah. And not saying that money's everything, but for years and years, there's players on that team that are turning down good, solid offers to go and make money playing paintball. And we were always like, one more year, we're doing it as friends, we're staying together, one more year. And even, the sponsors were great. Greg bent over backwards to make sure we had the paint we needed, everything we needed. But it's just like one more year. How are we going to do it? And we all stayed together for years, just wanting to do it with that group. And it was unfortunately, running with 5 or 6 guys, when one guy leaves, that's brutal. Like when we lost Brad, that was brutal. We were able to figure it out. But losing, TJ's had standing offers, Fuzz has had standing offers, everyone's got standing offers. So when one guy goes, the other guy's like, all right, do we want to stick it out one more year, or do I take these offers that people, have been sending my way for years? And then the second guy goes, and then the third guy's like, well, I got offers too. And then, so it's no one big thing. It's just one of those, how long can you keep a team together like that? And nothing against Greg, but he's not paying the players buku dollars like some of these other teams are playing. And it's just hard to keep players around like that. Luckily, none of us were after the check for the years and years and years, so we were able to stay together for so long. But it's just one of those things. Once one guy goes on a 5-man team, it's the nail in the coffin.
Look, people are going to talk shit, of course, and I get it. I understand those super fans that are just thinking in their minds like, oh well, Texas this or AC Dallas that. I can't believe these dudes would talk shit on these teams that are getting paid and then end up getting a paycheck themselves. And at the same time, I'm thinking like, look, there are very few human beings on planet Earth that can make some money playing paintball. And when we had Matt Jackson on, he's like, dude, I can only say no for so long. Like, I don't know how long this gravy train is going to roll for me, bro. I don't know how long I'm going to be elite like I've been elite. And he was blatantly honest about it. And he was just like, these people are, hitting me up constantly like, hey, we want to pay you cash money to come and play some paintball. Is that something you're interested in? And it's like, how long can you say no to that unless you're like independently wealthy, which, very few people are. So again, you really can't talk that much disrespect to the human beings that are trying to, tier up their bank accounts within the framework of the paintball game. Like, I get it. I've been in that situation too. I've been, had guys that got poached. Like, I understand it. It totally makes sense. You only have a certain window as a top team that may have like a ridiculous sponsorship, but you're not really kind of, because anytime people call me up constantly in the off season, top level pros, and they'll be like, hey, here's the deal. And I always lead with, hey, do you need the money? Because if you need the money, we're talking about, and I'm not even talking about like, do you desperately need the money? I'm talking about, does, 10 or 20,000 extra dollars in your pocket make a difference in your life? If you're independently wealthy or you own your own business and you really love your buddies, like, okay, cool. Like if $5,000, 10 grand is really not that much a difference in your life, then you can justify continuing to battle it out with your buddies and to try to live that dream, which is a miraculous thing. And it's amazing. And there are some guys like, AC Dallas, some of you guys were really trying to do that for a bit. And I respect that, but I just don't understand anyone that doesn't understand or doesn't at least give some leeway to the brass tacks reality of it, and which eventually creeped its way up into your guys' mix, and then once you have a really strong front, I don't care how strong the fort is, but it's all linked. Once one side of the ramparts goes, another side can go, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, no one's there anymore, and then that's what it seemed to be.
And it's not like guys. It's not like anybody's riding off into the sunset with a fat check or anything like that. Like TJ doesn't need the money, but that's a luxury that he's able to have and go where he wants to go. And like anything above zero is awesome, cool. Yeah. And like, not saying like any one player needs the money or any player but doesn't need the money, but we're not talking about large sums of money. It's not life changing, but it's more of like the opportunity. Like X Factor is another great team and they've won. So how long do you play with guys that haven't won? And even if you don't win with the X Factor, maybe you learn something, right? Like there's so much wealth of knowledge over there. Same with Impact, same with all these other teams. It's like, if we're not getting it done, maybe you as a player, if you want to keep expanding your career, go learn something from somebody that has, right? And that's kind of where we all kind of were. It's like, it's just time for new perspectives, new change, and see what happens. And, hopefully we all get to come back together. Hopefully we all get to do something. I mean, like, look at Meter, right? He did the whole tour, came back to Texas, and that dude's playing the best paintball I've ever seen him play. But you got to get those little bits of knowledge and those little conflicting views from other places, and that's what it was for me and a lot of the other guys.
No, it totally makes sense. I mean, Archie did that too. Archie went to Dynasty for a little bit, came back a better guy. Absolutely, Meter did the whole grand tour and came back a more robust mind, a more robust player. And very much became the elite threat that we always knew that Meter could be. I mean, Meter is a huge component of San Antonio X Factor's everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes X Factor so scary, and getting a guy like TJ Danner is going to make it even more so for them because he is one of those elite threats. And absolutely, man, it was kind of one of those things that I would see you guys and you get to the finals and you wouldn't have that 6th gear and it wouldn't work out for you. And then you take that 2nd place again and you have to reset for the next one. It's so hard to just get to the finals. But it just goes to show you, and it's kind of prove to that specific narrative and the concept of how hard it is to win a professional paintball tournament. And that's why, Ryan, I just wanted to lead with that because you were there at the heart of that. I also felt that you personally, because it was so difficult, and you guys were making it so deep so often. You were definitely, the microscope was on all of you. It made you all way better. I mean, if you look at where everyone landed, John Jackson's on the Ironman. They won the first event last year. Matt's getting paid from Impact. And honestly, Impact could be, amazingly elite this year with just adding like a guy like Matt with no Zach there with COVID. I mean, again, there's so many different routes we could take this in so many different ways we could have this conversation. TJ, going over to San Antonio X Factor, I feel like that's going to really help them, particularly on the D side. But who knows? I mean, but I honestly, the way you play with your broken hand, bro, I was so impressed. I was so happy for you. And I really think that Infamous is a great fit for you. So when that all kind of shook down and I heard, Ryan Hall's going to be on Infamous, I was like, that's perfect, man. Like, this is awesome. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for Infamous. Infamous had and there's, again, we got a while to talk about this. So I kind of want to almost shelve the Infamous conversation for a little bit, just because I feel like that's going to be a very lengthy conversation. And I kind of want to just stick in the pocket here and talk about AC Dallas's eventual, not, downfall or kind of destruction or whatever it may be, just because this is such a familiar trope. This is such a familiar story with so many people in the game of paintball. If you've been playing paintball for a while, this is something that's familiar to you. I went through it as well. Everyone's gone through this, where you're on a team, you're super in, you buy into it, you learn something from it, and then all of a sudden, the thing that you were fighting so hard for, all of a sudden doesn't exist anymore. Either you were the first guy out or the second guy out or the last guy out, whatever it may be. There's now a completely different narrative you're telling yourself for that next year. And I just think that's, one of the things about this show is, like, we just had Jason Edwards, and he was talking about how he's even to this day in his Instagram handle has FK, and that stands for fat kid. And he, had to lose 60 pounds to play the game at the high level. You didn't have to do that. You've been elite since, you kind of came into we've even talked about this. You were pissed off that you weren't like God's gift right out the gate because you wanted to be that type of player. And I love that about you. That's what made you so good right away, was you had that big chip on your shoulder. But everyone has their own road, everyone. And because everyone has their own road, every time we get people speaking openly and honestly about those journeys here. And I feel that the one thing that you may be able to give a glimmer of hope or some sort of insight to the people also coming up the ranks is a destruction of a team. Because everyone, if you've been around long enough, has had to deal with that bullshit, dude. It's crazy. It sucks. And it's so hard mentally to, you're writing so hard for this one story, and then that completely shuts off. And now you have to go over here and you got to get up for that, so and sometimes you're super excited about that. Sometimes it's a transition, but I just wanted you to kind of speak on that a little bit, just because that's what you've had to go through. And that's just something that everyone has to go through again when you spend enough time in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, since you brought up that Jason Edwards thing, I'm going to tell you a story that's never been told before. So 2013 Dallas, I saw a picture of myself off the field, and I was pretty big at the time. And I told myself I was going to make a change. I was going to take paintball seriously, because I was back when I was playing like low-level divisionals, and I was just kind of doing it for fun on the weekends, whatnot. And I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. I didn't think I would ever go pro, but I was like, I'm going to see how good I can get. And so to the date of 2013 Dallas, exactly 9 months later to the day, there was a Spartan race there. I tried to find the biggest, gnarliest race I could find. It was like 15-something miles and obstacles and all kinds of stuff. Lost 60 pounds for that race in 9 months, and Spartan headband ever since. So that's why I'm still wearing that.
So you got,
but as far as the team goes and everything. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Like I said, I'm not gonna, go around and tell everyone like, yeah. I don't want it to be one of those things that's, like, I deserve to be here because I did this, because I don't deserve anything. It's just like, how bad do you want it? What are you going to do to get it? And like I said, I never thought I was going to go pro back then. I was just like, I'm going to be serious. And if I'm going to be serious, I'm going to give it everything I've got and see what happens. And that's what happened. So no complaints there on that side.
So, wait, hold on a second. So so you lost 60 pounds?
60 pounds in 9 months. I was 208, went down to 148. And then I gained back a little bit of muscle, just starting to lift and whatnot. And like I said, 9 months to date was that Spartan race. And I finished in like the top 10% of my age group. Never ran a race before in my life. Like, I've never ran more than probably 3 miles at a time. So that was a pretty big personal achievement of mine. And it all kind of started as like that picture I saw of myself. I'll have to find that picture and send it to you sometime. But yeah, and that's why I still wear that headband today.
That's such a good story. That's what I'm talking about, man. It's so weird because, so many times you start talking to people and you have no idea the hurdles they really have had to overcome mentally, physically, in order to play this game at this level. So because I never got to see that out of you. I mean, when you came into it, in my mind, I never looked at you, because, like A-Rod or Henry Sense or, or even Jason Edwards. I remember when they first came into the league and then talking to guys that knew them, they were definitely on the heavier side. I don't really ever remember you in my mind being one of those like heavier guys that I'm thinking like, oh, this dude would be a stud if he could just lose 40 pounds. So by the time you got in there, you were already you had lost that weight, at least in my mind, and unless I'm missing something. But it just every time I hear one of those stories, it's just so motivating because, I just constantly see this on the divisional level. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the age too. These, we're talking guys that are, or girls, whatever it may be, people that are younger, people that are older, but just knowing that's within you, is that you can drop that weight once you decide and focus and laser in on that being your story. Like, dude, that's it. I'm over it. I'm going to focus in. I'm going to lose this weight. Like, it just seems like it's just such a story often told. And it's just so amazing because on the other side of that, are your dreams. Are your dreams being fulfilled? Playing pro paintball, whatever it may be, getting the girl, whatever it may be, it's just so cool to kind of hear those stories over time because I keep hearing these stories. So I'm really glad that you were honest about that. Because that's awesome, man. Like I had no idea. I always thought you were kind of, because I know you played football but some of those football guys like also, will put on some LBs at the end of their time because they were so easy for them to keep it off. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, how the hell did I get to be 230? This is bullshit. and then
exactly.
Then they get motivated to focus. So then okay, so again, let's touch on this before we move on and kind of talk about AC Dallas and Infamous. We've had you on the show before. I do want you to talk about your anodizing company as well too. But you've talked about your kind of your entree into the game, but it has been a little bit. So let's just remind everybody real quick, like how you were able to kind of tear up real fast. Because to me, you kind of came out of nowhere and immediately were an aggressive force in the center of the field for AC Dallas. And I was like, holy shit, look at this guy. And then I remember having a conversation with you before we went played a Woods Ball event, the Iron City Classic, and you were like, look, because a lot of the younger people like yourself didn't kind of come up playing Woods Ball, and then you were adamant. You're like, no, Matty, dude, I'm all about 10-man. I played Woods Ball. I came up in this game. Like, don't count me as one of these dudes that doesn't know how to get down in the woods just because I'm a little younger. And I respected that, as I respect all the people that have played in the woods. And came up in that realm. So let's just remind everybody how you did come up before we kind of move on.
Yeah, so I grew up just playing, local rec ball, local field. A lot of these guys, it's so funny hearing like Fuzz and John and TJ and those guys talk about like, yeah, you remember like 2007 World Cup? And, it's like I had like a A5 back then and, just tearing it up in the woods, the local field. But when 2013 Dallas was like one of my first national events that I went to, and I just kind of started getting into playing actual tournaments. We were playing like some Woods Balls out there, like cousins too, some of the UWLs and whatnot. And a lot of the guys that I grew up playing with are like the old addicted guys, some of the torn guys from the amateur leagues, like back in the day when it was amateur open, novice and all that good stuff. So I grew up playing kind of around like North Texas paintball against some like really kind of hard players back in the day. It was the old school mentality of like, just beat them up and everything like that. And some really good minds though. Like I said, a lot of the addicted guys like David Kramer, the Bohannons, Pete Middleton, Disco Pete. You'll probably be the only one that hears this that might know who that is.
I know Pete Middleton
and
for sure.
That's just kind of yeah. So just kind of growing up like that and playing tournaments, and then when I kind of lost all that weight, things just became easier for me, right? So I started, getting a little more notice in the divisional scene, but I'm still just kind of knocking around Texas, playing Division IV paintball for years. No real aspirations of that. I'm just trying to see how good I can get, and I'm not, counting on going pro or anything. And then one of the guys that was running my team, he has been around paintball for a long time, especially North Texas, and Greg Pauly was back in the scene and, around North Texas doing his AC thing, building those guys up. And he's like, hey, you seriously need to look at this guy. And Greg respected Brock Bohannon, the guy that was running my team, enough to give me a look. and they already kind of like seen me at some of these tournaments and whatnot. Nothing crazy, but you're talking about like a Division 4 kid playing semi-pro or pro, because that's all the AC had at the time. And went to a tryout, and then Greg and Nathan pulled me aside and they were like, "Can you buy a plane ticket to Virginia Beach next week?" And next thing you know, we were at the event, and I thought it was surreal. I was like, I didn't think I'd ever play semi-pro or anything like that. The next thing you know, we get to the event, Thursday practice, and I'm playing like every point at Thursday practice. And one of the guys pulls me aside, like, "Dude, I think you're going to start tomorrow." I was like, "No way, dude. There's no way. I've never even played against a guy of that caliber or whatever." And had a good event, and the rest was history. And the biggest thing that I owe Greg, I mean, a lot of knowledge and a lot of things, but the biggest thing that I owe Greg is that he gave me the ability to play as much paintball as I wanted to play. So at the time, I was going to school at A&M. There's a local field down there, so I was playing paintball with A&M, playing paintball with AC, and there's a local field down there. And Greg set it up to where like full access to the park, as much paint as I needed, whatever I needed. And I'm not saying that, you know, you have to get in right with the guy that's going to give you a skid of paint or anything like that. It's nothing like that. But he said, if you want to put in the effort and you need the paint or you need access to a field or whatever you need, we'll make sure it happens. And then Devin Stewart and I started playing 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes 2 a days. And that's the biggest thing from Greg, was that he allowed me to play as much as I needed to play to get to where I am today. So it's really all it was just grinding it out. And I was even talking to a guy this weekend about, like, you know, what does it take? What is it? And it's like, it's the little things, you know, like when I came home from the field, I'd leave my gun together. And if I just pick up my gun and walk across the living room, set it back down, and then pick it up when I leave the couch and go to the next place, you're thinking about it all the time. It's in your hands. And I told myself, I'm going to spend more time behind a gun than anybody else in the league. I'm going to spend more time in a field than anybody else in the league. And that's really all it was. Sometimes I only had a bag of paint. Sometimes I had cases. It's figure out a way to get yourself behind a paintball gun. And that's what worked for me.
Yeah, and to kind of get into that lifestyle too is important, I think. You know, and happy birthday to Devin Stewart. I know you guys just had an awesome time together,
Mm-hmm.
little crawfish boil, but it's kind of like feeling out who is down to be in that situation with you and trying to, you know, because I feel like that's important. You know, like they may not even be on the same team, but just having people around you that are on that same vibe. Because you're trying to one up them, they're trying to one up you, even if it's unspoken. You know, it's just, and you're supporting each other in your quest. You know, so I see this constantly. You know, guys like Florida is big on this right now. I love seeing the groups in Florida. Texas is another group that's like this, and it's everywhere. But it's just really cool to see these guys in their tribes, because paintball is very tribal. But I know, and it's kind of weird for you now because, you know, you're going from Texas, but you kind of tiered yourself up to a point where, okay, now I got to go outside my realm, right, in order to find that next home. And then now you're going into the Infamous camp. There's some stuff that I do still want to kind of touch on about Texas and about AC Dallas, but let's just jump in and talk about that, just because I feel this is a good point to kind of discuss that transition, because, you know, you're talking about, you know, with Greg Pauly, with Devin Stewart, you know, grinding out, just picking your gun up, walking around your living room, you know, feeling that vibe. And then now here we are in 2021. And I do want to talk about your performance with the broken hand that you had, because I felt like you were balling out of control and being nasty out there, even with an injury, and that's the type of player you are to me. You know, to me, it's like, you know, you always have seemed to rise above the occasion when things aren't going great for you, you know, like when it's not looking good for you and you haven't been getting your shine and you haven't been getting your spins, and you get out there and it's tough. And it's like, well, we don't really know how much Ryan Hall's going to play. All of a sudden, bam, you like reach that next level. Now you got a broken hand. We don't know if you can even play at all. And all of a sudden, dude, you're out there just, you know, running through and shooting people. It's like you're that gritty, tough nosed, like Texas baller to me. So respect to you that you seem to thrive in those situations. I think that's awesome. I think that's why you're going to be a good fit for Infamous, because Infamous is very much that's the type of people that Travis wants around. That's the type of people that they have always had on that squad. If you go back historically, Infamous is all about those gritty grinders, those guys that'll play injured, you know, the nasty, you know, dudes that are the undercover brothers that are, you know, that don't get all that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's all stars that have, you know, come from that era, but you can't tell me that LB Fowl, Rusty Glaze, John Richardson, you know, again, I could just go through a laundry list of killers from Infamous, Cody Minkowski, that were underrated. You know, I mean, I feel like Infamous constantly has dudes that are underrated on that squad. If you're me and you know every player on every team, then yeah, they're not underrated because I know what they can do. But if you're a casual fan, I feel like Infamous constantly has dudes that are underrated because that's just the type of lineup they constantly put out there, which is why they've done so well over the years. You know, I mean, it goes even back to some of the dudes that were riding the pine for those teams back in the day. You know, like even the guys that ride the pine were still ballers. So it's like, I just think it's a great fit for you. So let's just dive right in and have that conversation too. We'll go back and talk a little bit about Texas Paintball and AC Dallas and your rise up a little bit. But, you know, I think it's just pertinent to just discuss Infamous right away, right now. So what do you think? Like, how did this happen for you? How did the transition happen for you? How do you feel you fit in the team? Obviously, I'm pretty passionate about you fitting perfect with Infamous, but, you know, tell me in your own words.
Yeah, so obviously right after the season when, you know, we all had conversation, it was nothing was kind of any backdoor deals or anything like that. TJ and I went out to dinner probably 6 times. Like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Or, you know, like it was everyone took the off season very seriously, and there was any kind of like shadiness going on between the players or anything like that. We were trying to make sure, like, if I go, are you going to go? If you go, does that guy have a place to go? You know, stuff like that. And we were all kind of talking like what would be good fits for everybody. And like I said, there's also Diesel too, right? Like Diesel's up and coming, and that was a serious consideration of mine as well. The big thing for me about not going to Diesel was I was trying to look for radically new ideas and perspectives. So Diesel plays differently than Dallas did, different players, different mentalities, but we played against them so much that it's in the same ballpark, right? And I was like, maybe I end up back in Texas and back on one of these teams, but I want to learn something very different, just outside the wheelhouse. And we played Infamous all the time. And one of the reasons why we liked playing against Infamous was they would give you so many different looks. They'll try the slow game, they'll try the fast game, they'll try like the intermediate, they'll do the obscure stuff. And being open to those ideas, I thought that would be a good fit for me. Of just like, let's try things. Because I've always been the try guy. Like, oh, it's not working over here on the snake side. Let's see if Ryan can weasel his way in there. It's not working on the Drudo side over there. Or like, hey, let's try 2 guys up the center of the field. What's this crazy play? And that's always kind of been like my role. So I like the idea of being open, and that was one of the reasons that led me to the short list of teams that I was like considering. And then I even talked to some players that played on Infamous. Like I talked to Meter, and Meter was like, of all the people, like Travis is a cool dude, and you're gonna learn stuff from him, you know. And so that also like led me there. And coming from such a small team, I really loved the ability to play a ridiculous amount of points. The downside of that is when you get to the finals, you're on your 50th something point, and that guy's on his 30th something point, right? But we never had a fight for playing time on the field, and I'm not gonna say that lost some of our fire, but when I come on Infamous, if I don't have that starting spot, well, then obviously I have my goal. And if I do have that starting spot, there's 5 other dudes that want to take it. So the competition is there, and that's the kind of environment that I like to be in. Let's grind it out. Let's see who can play more points. I'm gonna be on the box before you are, and let's make it happen, right? So a lot of different aspects, and also that was a winning team in multiple generations, multiple eras, and they're trying to get back to that dominant team. And Travis was like, hey, this was going to happen with or without you. Are you along for the ride? You know, so I thought there was a lot of different aspects. I'm happy where I'm at, and I'm hoping that we can really fight it out, and kind of between the players of, you know, who wants those starting spots, who wants to get that pressure and elevate everybody, right? And that's really kind of what I was looking for in a team.
Yeah, look, honestly, along with Damage, Infamous is one of my, and I feel like Infamous is more of a dark horse because I feel like Damage is a little bit tighter right now. They have a little bit, as far as their roster is concerned, the people that are on that starting 7 or 8 rotation have a little bit less to prove than what Infamous does. Again, but not to say that Infamous can't come out and win the very first event. We've discussed this constantly on the show. We will continue to discuss this, but the Ironman winning the first event last year should throw a giant beacon of possibility up for every single professional paintball team out there. Because if the Ironman can win Vegas of last year, then there's no reason that Infamous can't come out and win the first event of this year. So the confidence should be high for everyone that's ranked about 12th or 13th in the entire league on up. I mean, everyone that's in that realm should be thinking, okay, well, you know, if things go well for us and the paintball gods shine upon us, then we have a chance to win this tournament. You know, we're going to try to give them, you know, the paintball gods our best look so that we can, you know, when things bounce out, that it'll bounce in our favor. But, you know, that being said, you know, having the Ironman be on a rebuild last year and looking at the Infamous squad that currently exists, there is literally no reason why Infamous can't go out into this first event and win that event. Also, strangely enough, in your bracket is going to be the Ironman, AC Diesel, New York Extreme, and DMG. That's actually a pretty nasty bracket. I do want to get your thoughts on that bracket, but let's talk about Infamous just as a team before we discuss the battle that's in front of you guys. So when you look at Infamous as a squad, what I see is a lot of people that are willing, that have a giant, and I'm always looking for this. How big of a chip do you have on your shoulder? How much experience do you have coming into this battle? How skilled are you at your position? And when I ask those questions to the people that exist on Infamous, there's a lot of check marks, you know, like very skilled in their position, giant chip on their shoulder, and ready to go and confident. I feel you guys have a really good look potentially going this year. The one thing though with Infamous is that if you go back to last season, Infamous has been very successful in 10-man paintball in the past couple years. But as far as the NXL events, their main focus, it hasn't really been that great. You know, the two events last year, a 12th place in Vegas and 11th place at the World Cup, and that means no Sunday performances. You know, and Travis didn't put together the roster that he has to not make Sunday 2 events in a row. I understand that we had the COVID year, but also Travis Lemansky, who lived 2 blocks down the street from me when we were coming up the ranks in the early 2000s playing pro paintball against each other, doesn't give a shit about your excuses, you know? So yeah, cool. All right, whatever. We had, you know, whatever, this happened and that happened. Like, I don't care. You know, at the end of the day, the paintball game happened and a team won. Was it us? Oh, it wasn't us? Okay, well, why wasn't it us? And that's something that everyone on Infamous from last year needs to look at, because to me, I look at how poor Infamous performed at those 2 events. And as an Infamous fan, I'm disappointed, you know, because I really thought that with the roster and the rebuild that Travis put together, that there's no reason that team shouldn't make both Sundays and make a run, let alone not make Sunday at all. You know, so, you know, let's just talk about that real quick. Obviously, you just got on the team, so that's not your fault. But that has to be discussed, because if we're not bullshitting, if we're not, you know, fumbling around and not talking about the main storyline here. I mean, that is the main storyline for Los Angeles Infamous. This is a legendary squad that has been successful in multiple incarnations of that team. There are legendary players still on the team to this day. There's threats in every position. They have good support now. And with the players that have been picked up in the past, you know, with the Greg Stewarts and the Harrises, with Harrison Fry and you, like, I'm sorry, but that's a team that needs to contend immediately, the way I'm looking at it. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier. Travis said when we were talking in the offseason that he was like, basically like, this is going to happen. This team is going to win, whether I gotta sink money into it or time into it or whatever. Like, this is going to happen. We're gonna turn the ship around and make it happen. And that's kind of the environment that I want it to be in. And I know no players on Infamous were happy with last year. So whether it lights a fire to do better this year, or just extra motivation here or there, or whatever, or, you know, whether it's on the individual side or team side, whatever it is, I know nobody's content. And that's kind of the environment that I like to be in. Like, so on AC, we had really good success, but we didn't have to fight for playing time. So you were content on the playing side. We were very critical and non-content on the performance, even though we're, you know, top 4s here or there. I think we missed like one Sunday since I was on the team or something like that. And it's like, there's so many teams that would love to be in our situation, but we were super critical and never content. And that's where I think the team stands now, like, let's make it happen, whatever it takes. And I think it's going to turn around. I really do. It's just a matter of time. So I'm coming into it as, hey, I'm an open book. I want to learn everything you guys know. I want to also give my input. I'm not going to be the guy that's like, hey, well, back in the day on AC, we did it this way because we had different players and it's different. But if I can shed some light on, like, hey, we had this call and it worked great, or we did this and it worked really good, or whatever, just different ideas, and like, let's make it happen. Let's figure it out.
No, I think that's what you would want from somebody in your position. I mean, you're not a boot rookie, Ryan. I mean, you're somebody that's been playing on a team that was at the very tippy top of the league and was very successful, and you were out there in the grind in that squad and with a team that didn't have a deep roster. So yeah, if I'm Travis or I'm Cody and I'm one of the leaders on that squad, I'm Greg, I'm Thomas, one of the veterans on that squad, and I'm bringing you on. Like, I definitely want to know what you think about things, and I definitely want you involved in that side of the discussion, game plans, just all of it, because that's the whole point of picking somebody like you up. I mean, it's not just what you're going to do on the field. But let's just real quick. I want to talk about some of the players on Infamous and what your thoughts on the roster, because again, a lot of people are like, oh, Infamous this. They just hear the name of the team and a couple spots here or there, but they're not breaking it down player to player, position to position. Every other sport, and this is one of the things I really am trying to harp on our show here, is that we discuss positions. We discuss exactly what human beings are going to be doing within the framework of a game plan, within their team and the teamwork that exists to try to, tear up on Sunday for these top teams. Because, we could sit here and talk forever. Oh, they have the such and such and such and such, but who's playing the one, who's playing the two, how are they going to vibe together? Who's going to be shooting off the break? Who's putting the X's and the O's together for that squad? I mean, that's really the meat and the potatoes of a discussion about actually what's going to be happening. But before we get into that with Infamous, which I think is going to be beneficial for you guys, but let's just talk about you with your broken hand playing some awesome paintball. Because I was impressed, man. You've been a gritty performer out there, and when I heard that you had broke your hand, they were like, we don't even know if Ryan can play. This is before World Cup. I'm doing my due diligence and hitting up all the leaders on all the teams and trying to figure out, who's going to be there, who's not, who's hurt, who's not, who's looking good, who looks like shit, just whatever. And they were like, we don't know if Ryan's can play. He broke his hand. And then not only did you play, but you were out there, and I felt like having an awesome performance. So what was going on in your head during that situation?
I knew I was going to play. Like, there's no way. I mean, a hand is going to, no way. I told TJ, I was like, if I have to play the right side of the field, every single point, and we're just right side, strong side the whole event, we'll make it happen. But there's no way I'm not going to play if I could walk. And not trying to like toot my own horn or say like I'm some kind of big bad brawler or anything like that. That's just the way I am. If I have the opportunity to play, I'm going to play. And that field, I enjoyed that field. It suited me well. And I've also been trying to. I've been in the league long enough to where when I first came in, you're getting dinked out of these like little bitty spots. You have to play tighter than you've ever played before. And then I've started realizing, I'm always a student of the game, always watching. So like you start out playing super tight, and then you kind of get comfortable, and then some of the better players in the league play super big. Like look at J-Rab, he's over top of every bunker he can play. Archie plays huge, yep. And that guy is a killer. Fuzz, has a mix of everything. Play as big as you can, and force people to be like, hey, you better put two guns on me, or I'm going to stand over top of everything and just dominate. So that's something that I've been trying to do more. Chicago of last year, Vegas, and then into World Cup is I'm going to play bigger, go further, push and push and push and push. We kind of talked, so I think it was like Thursday or Friday of one of the events, and you were like, oh yeah, you played good yesterday. I was like, yeah, I got clips coming to their side here. If I make this move at this time, I could go to their side more often, and that's what I'm really focusing on now. and it worked out on that field. It's just the way it is. Maybe hopefully it works out in other fields, and I can continue to progress that part of my game. Is not just play this bunker, but play this whole area, be on their side as much as possible, and just be a nuisance. And I think, especially in the center, the people that are not playing a brick or playing a wedge, but just being a nuisance, those are the guys that have the most success on at least in the center of the field.
I've always kind of had a soft spot for you, brother. It made me more of a fan of you, even more, just because I, had talked to the guys before. They're like, "Oh, we saw the X-ray, bro. His hand's totally screwed up. We can't believe he's gonna play." And I've had, I broke my hand last year. I completely dislocated this finger all the way to here. Had to put it in on some grid wall. It was nasty. So having had a disgusting hand injury and having to deal with that, it kind of made my heart go out to you a little bit more. And the fact that you got it through it and play with it, I was just like, dude, props to Ryan Hall. And and you played your ass off. And not in a great performance again overall for the team. It was a little bit of a tough break for AC Dallas as a whole, in the sense that a 10th place performance, not what you probably and everyone on that team was expecting for the last run of it. The in a 7th place at the first event in Vegas, so coming out and kind of beating up on Level, completely demolishing Aftermath, not letting them score a point, but then getting beat by your brother team AC Diesel, and then going into the last game of the prelims and losing to the Ironman by 1, and then playing the Ironman again and also losing to the Ironman by 1. That's not how everyone on AC Dallas was probably thinking that their last event was going to go down, but it was a hard fought. I think what was cool to see AC Dallas at the end of your guys' story was that you definitely, as we say, whatever you want to call it, die on your shields, die on your swords. Sometimes we say die on your sword because that means you're going forward and literally jumping on your sword, or dying on your shield, meaning, it's the ancient Spartan wisdom tradition where the wives would help create the shields, and they would tell to their husbands either come back with this shield or on it. So either one, but I just feel that that was the finish for you guys. And so I think that no matter what happens and however you guys end up telling your story to yourselves in the future, I just think that the last 2 battles that you guys had and the way you went out wasn't terrible. So I hope you think of it that way. Again, with, the 1 point loss to the Ironman and in the prelims, and the 1 point loss to him in the quarters. I know that, again, not how you wrote it up, but you didn't get your asses whooped. You didn't go out tame. You didn't go out weak. It was a fight, and I respect that. And honestly, when you look at how you guys all scattered to the 4 wins of the paintball compass, it does make a lot of sense. So you get TJ going to X Factor, Matt going to Impact, you go to Infamous, John, goes on over to the Ironman, BJ goes to AC Diesel. I'm actually shocked that nobody picked up BJ as a first attacker. That's a little puzzling to me, but I just think that let's talk about Diesel real quick before we get into your brackets. I can't keep you here all night, but I do want to talk about your bracket, and you guys are in the bracket with AC Diesel. To me, I think it's as a Texan, you've got to be a little bit of a fan of the story that Diesel could have in front of themselves. I think that's a team that, I look at Infamous, I look at Damage, I look at Diesel. These are teams that I really feel could have a very bright future in front of them very quickly. Even having the discussion yesterday with Jason in Damage and having ML Kings in their bracket, to me, it wouldn't be a giant shocker if the ML Kings came out of that bracket if the Russians don't have their stud lineup. We just heard that they picked up, they're having to pick up dudes, so, we'll see. But anyway, we could go down this rabbit hole. We will a little bit, but let's talk about your bracket real quick with Diesel. I just think that with BJ going to Diesel and how many guys they already have that are threats on that squad, to me, Diesel is immediately going to be potentially a constant presence on Sunday, and a team that we'll see how things shake out. But I think they can make some runs in 2021. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those guys have a lot to prove. They've already had some success, and they want so much more. Those guys play a ton of paintball. I mean, look at how much they want it and how much they're playing. They're doing the work. So you definitely can't slouch on those guys. On AC, we knew going into World Cup that Diesel was going to be a hardest match. Doesn't matter like who's the top tier team, who's the not, whatever. We play those guys all the time. Everyone knows tendencies. So like if I'm watching film for a match, I'm going to look at all the breakouts of where they go, the kind of like some stuff like that. But then I'm going to look at the players who I'm going to play against, because that's ultimately what I'm going to go. Those are the guys that I have to shoot out first in order to shoot the other guys in the side, right? So studying those tendencies is so big in paintball. With AC and with Dallas and Diesel, everyone knew everyone's tendencies. You know, their timing, how they want to do it, like how they look when they're trying to make a move, or like, you know, the way they want to gunfight. So I can take a little bit of that to Infamous. And I hope to do exactly that. But at the same time, you know, those guys are playing against my tendencies. They're gonna, you know, hey, Ryan likes to make this move when no one's looking at him, or you know, he likes to think this way. So you know, I got to think outside the box too. But those guys are gonna be a tough match. Like I said, they've already had some success, and they have a lot more that they want to prove. And they're putting in the work. So you definitely can't slouch them. Those guys have played like every weekend since Cup, maybe a couple weekends off. So definitely can't take them lightly.
Well, to me, again, it's positional. You know, it's who are the threats in what position, who are the twos behind them, who are the threes running the show from the center and shooting bodies off the break, who are the leaders putting together the game plans. And when I look at AC Diesel and I look at all of those different things, I feel like they have a really good chance to make a decent run this year. New York Extreme and DMG also in your bracket. And let's talk about the lineup for Infamous also as well. It's just it's a really fun lineup, man. Like when I'm looking at Greg Sewers, Cody Mikowski, Thomas Taylor, these are legends in the game. Cody is playing the best paintball he's ever played. Thomas Taylor is one of the best snake players to ever play the game. You know, Kevin Rudolph is now coming back into it. He's a very underrated player as a 2 or 3. Had some family stuff he had to deal with for a while. And Greg Sewers is an absolute beast on the attack. There's a reason why he's getting paid or has been getting paid to play this game for an incredibly long period of time. Played for pretty much every top pro team. Harrison Fry is super fun to watch. You can see the schedule there on the screen. But Harrison Fry is, again, just, he's an up-and-coming guy, even though he's been getting a lot of shine recently. Jonah Jamrose is another guy that I really feel is going to be really good. I've been hearing a lot of amazing things about Jonah. He's very respectful. When I talked to him, he was just all business, but also kind of fun at the same time. So, and then they pick you up. I just think that, Infamous, am I forgetting anybody? I know you guys Waring went to Mutiny and now to the Russians, but I feel like that's a badass squad.
Yeah.
That's an awesome squad.
Yeah. I mean, you got Jonah and Thomas on the snake side. You can't help but smile just watching Thomas play. Like even coming in the pits, he's as a paintball fan, it's so awesome to see. And then Jonah's a great kid too. And I loved his attitude when we had the practice down in San Antonio. He came off and he was like, yeah, I had a good point. I know I had a good point, but he wasn't, expecting the high fives and this and that. And he's just like, all right, yeah, good point. But here's what you can fix. And it was so good about that. You could watch him progress throughout the weekend, which is exactly what you want to see in a young player, no matter what position they play. And then Zach Patient was out there, in San Antonio as well. We'll see how much he gets to play. But that was also cool to see. Like I said, as a paintball fan, I'm like, oh, that's Thomas Taylor, there's Zach Patient, that's Kevin Rudolph over there. It's super cool. But yeah, Callie's back. He's playing great. Cody is a monster right now. It's so exciting to see. It's funny how paintball shifted away from the true 3-spot player, and now you have players like Cody and Marcelo that are playing a 3-spot that any point in time can just go actually down the field, attack, get in the snake, whatever it needs to happen to close that game out. And it's so nice having Cody on the field to be able to do those kind of things. Like I said, Greg and Harrison and me on the Dorito side, or if I go up the middle, Greg played the middle in Vegas. I played against him when we played our infamous match. There's a lot of versatility, which I really hope we utilize in at the same time competition. Like I said, I want to be one of those 5 barrels touching the start gate. I'm not going to go lightly on that, and there's a lot of guys that want my spot. So whoever the starting 5 ends up being, it's going to be fought for. So I think that's super exciting. And there's not many bad options, bad combos. Like I'm not, I think me coming onto the field and kind of giving you some different options in the middle allows some of those middle players to both play in the middle, but also play on the outsides. And then you start getting to piece together these different combinations of players, these different 2s or 3s on the side of the field. And I really like the way our roster looks right now. Absolutely.
I do too. Again, it is very much who is playing what position, how do they play that position with the people right next to them, how does it all work cross field, who are putting the X's and the O's together. But with experience, how experienced Travis is at this point in time, obviously a legendary player now, and I just love how he's general managed this team. I think, again, Jonah is a rising talent. You're a proven talent. I think Harrison's a proven talent at this point. Brett's been getting better too. Brett Messer, coming off the bench. I feel
absolutely,
like
yeah. Brett too. Brett was balling this last weekend. He was playing phenomenal this last weekend too. Just want to point that out there.
Very, very versatile. A guy again. It's like if Cody needs to come off, I feel like if you don't have a guy that can give Cody a rest every now and then, are you going to get Cody at a 10 the entire tournament? Probably not. So having a guy like Brett that can come in and give Cody a couple breaths, a couple beats, a couple points, to get Cody back out there. I mean, that guy's invaluable. That's so crucial to have a player like that. And I feel like Brett Messer could be that guy for Cody. I feel like, basically also depending on where you guys are going to, put what bodies, I feel like you guys could be way less scoutable because of how versatile you are, how versatile Greg can be. I know Thomas Taylor and Greg typically D-side, snake side players, and then Harrison also, typically a D-side player coming up right now and becoming a name. But I feel like with what, X Factor's done, with what some of these top squads have done with their guys, and what I saw at a Revo in the beginning of this year, Frank Antetomaso was kind of playing all over the place and playing really well. I just feel like that's the next evolution of the game is every, third spin, you're putting a guy like Thomas Taylor on the D side. And now all of a sudden you become so much less scoutable. It's so hard now because, and you're not telling me that Thomas Taylor, with all the experience that he has, can't play 1 point out of 3 on the D side of the field. Like, come on, dude, get out of here. Like, of course he can. That's just
absolutely.
Thomas doing his homework, and so, and same with you, that's one of the things that I thought was so great about your personal ability over this, the struggles you've had to go through to earn your start, because dude, you came out the gate. It was like Ryan the Wall Hall, say it was like Nick Laval, the wall, blah, 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 blah. It all rhymes. But we started to say that shit because like that was the case. You played the wall so well. Nick Laval was playing the wall so well. Now that bunker set comes off. And then for a while, it was like, okay, where are these guys going to play? But that's why with your broken hand and how well you were doing, I was thinking like, dude, that's what I'm talking about, Ryan Hall. Good for you. You're going out, you're proving your versatility. And then sure enough, you get picked up from Infamous. And now to me, when I look at the future, as young as you are, dude, there's no reason that you can't be a threat on the snake side. You can't be a threat in the center. You can't be a threat on the D side. Make your team less scoutable. And that goes for every single one of these dudes that we've been talking about. Like Jonah's so young. Are you kidding me? Like, dude, that guy can't get pigeonholed into a spot yet. So when I look at Infamous and if I'm going to scout you guys and if I'm Travis, I'm trying to get you guys different spins and different spots. Again, hey, I'm not saying don't play completely out of position all the time, but every now and then throw it in there because then when we get to Sunday and I'm looking down the field and I'm like, dude, I have no idea where Ryan's going to go right now. Well, he probably is going to go in the center or maybe snake side, but he might be on the D side too. We've seen him everywhere and he's had a pretty good event, so like that's, I feel like the next stage of the game, just because that's the current stage of the game, because that's what we've seen out of the top teams. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, traditionally the game has been, you get these young one players, these one attackers, you give them several years and wait for their knees to blow out and then move them back. And then, give them a little longer and then they move back again. And that's always kind of how it's been. Totally. But now you got players like Marcelo Margot, like I said, that's healthy, playing a 3 spot. And like in a scramble, on a 2-on-2 scramble, you don't have to have that big 3-player back there. You got freaking Marcelo Margot playing back there as a third guy.
Yeah.
You got
I love how
players.
No, just
go ahead.
Just real quick. No, I love how you bring up Marcelo because I feel like he's the perfect archetype for that. I love Marcelo. Marcelo came up as a 1.
Yeah.
And he learned
and
to
Meter
play
too.
the game on offense. Same with Meter. Yeah, Meter's a great example as well too for San Antonio X-Actor. So, we're literally talking about the teams that took 1 and 2 at the World Cup last year, and it was a fight all the way to the overtime point where Marcelo Margot was on the field with Tyler Harmon, and they ended up winning it for San Diego Dynasty. But the reason why a San Diego Dynasty can win a World Cup is because you have guys that are so versatile in the scramble. It's like I feel like the scramble is such a it's
an art form.
It's a very it's an art form, but it's also a point of the game that is just so very little understood. And we constantly we try to talk about it in the show when it happens, but whenever we're watching those things, anytime it devolves from a 5-on-5 into the scramble, what does a scramble mean? That means, well, all your original game plans and all the original positions are completely scrambled up, and now you have to figure it out. Whoever figures it out first is probably going to win the point. That's why it's called a scramble. And so, but when you have guys like Marcelo Margot that have that high paintball IQ, that know what a front player does, that know what the 2 does, that know what the 3 does, it's a great one-on-one guy, that's a great gunfighter. So basically there's no position of the game that Marcelo's going to be in where he is frazzled, where he's pondering what's going to happen next, because he's played every single one of those positions. He's been on the attack. So if he has to get into the snake, he can do that. If he has to be the one on the D side, he can do that. If he has to push up the center, no problem. If he has to slow play something to kind of, buy the time, let the play develop, let his guys push up on the other side, he can do that. If he's in a low body situation, no problem. One-on-one, cool. He's won those too. So I'm glad that you brought up Marcelo because 1, I love Marcelo, but 2, that's a perfect guy to, have as an example of what is required as this game has diversified and, you want to be able to play every position. Like the 2s and 3s are very liquid. There is no really such thing as a 2 and 3. Depending on where you start, we can discuss that, but Marcelo is the perfect guy, because he can also play the 1 too. Like I've there's been times when he's gone and been the first attacker on certain points and he's done great, like he was when he was coming up. So I'm glad you brought up Marcelo. Yeah. That's like one of the archetypes of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at like Vegas during the COVID year, due to injuries and whatnot, not having TJ, I kind of had to play both sides of the field, and Fuzz had to play both sides of the field. And we would do different things on both of those fields. So sometimes I might be playing a 3, a 2 on the snake side, a 2 on the Dorito side, a 1 on the snake side, a 1 on the Dorito side. And like Vegas gave me a lot of confidence, like, hey, I can do this. It's going to, like, whatever the given situation, I could do it. And then going into World Cup, that's what it was. Sometimes I played the backhand across, on the snake side and just stayed back there the whole time. Sometimes I was on the other side of the field in the center on the break. Sometimes I was the anchor guy in the center of the field. Sometimes I was the 1 on the snake side of the, sometimes I might run up and over and like in the 40 Dorito on the break. And that's a game that I'm trying to evolve rapidly because it's what's being asked of me. And I think that is where paintball's headed. And it's super exciting to not have these roles. You just have ballers that can do anything. And it makes the scramble especially that much more exciting to watch. It's not like, oh, well, that guy over there, he's not going to come down the snake side. All I got to do is make sure I don't get bunkered in the back of my head and keep an eye on this guy. I'll deal with that guy later. You got to watch everybody these days. And as the game evolves more and more, it's just going to become more and more prevalent. And I hope to be one of those guys that's, the random oddball kind of do everything guy and be really proficient at it. And that's just kind of my goal. And that's the role I've been put in. That's my pure goal right now, is just to be good at any situation. And we'll see how far that goes. I've met my goal so far, and we'll keep going.
Hey, Ryan, to be honest, I really have a lot of confidence in you. You're going to be able to do that because you've really been fun to watch and have continued to get better and mentally tougher as you progressed through your career so far. A couple of questions before I let you go. Obviously, got to talk about the first match against AC Diesel and then the Ironman in day 1. But before we get into that, let's just say I got a gun that needs to get anodized. What do I need to do to hit up Arc Anodizing and Ryan Hall to get my thing pimped out? What's the deal? because I
hit
got a
us
couple
up
guns that
on
need jumped out.
Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, I'll get you after the show. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Arc Anodizing on both of those. There's bukus and bukus of albums and past guns. I have hundreds of guns I can't even post because every time we post, we just get more and more messages. It's absurd right now. The Ano game is popping off, and it's great. But yeah, hit us up, Arc Anodizing on Facebook, Instagram. We'll get you a quote, send the gun in, and anything you want, we'll make it happen. So super easy to get a hold of there. Like I said, if you got some stuff, let me know. Just don't send me like a 1980 cocker.
Well, I mean, I definitely got some old autocockers that need to get dialed in, but yeah, no, I do have some stuff that needs to be tended to. But I just think it's really cool because, you know, I remember talking to you as you've kind of worked your way through different incarnations of what you need to do in regular life in order to make this happen for paintball. And this is something that's also a constant story on this show too. You know, when we've discussed with many different guys that do many different things, like how do you make this work? Because a lot of people are like, okay, yeah, sure. There are a few select handful of people that can get paid to play this game. And it's a very tiny amount that it can actually make enough to make a living off of it. And if you're the next Oliver Lang, hey, God bless you. You know, I'm not telling you not to do that, but it would be in your best interest to try to develop a trade and whatever it may be, you know, whether you're going to school to figure out what you need to do on the business side of things or develop a trade to, you know, make something to sell to people, whatever it is. But it was just really cool to kind of see you kind of all of a sudden find this really awesome niche for yourself that has just worked out. One, you're providing an amazing service to the world. Two, it makes a living for you. And it's just like perfect fit, you know? So like any advice out there for people that are trying to, you know, dovetail in their paintball life with, you know, trying to exist at the same time, because you've obviously found a gem of a position for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, paintball is not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's not cheap either. Like I said, when I was going to school, I was fortunate enough to have enough off time of school after classes, in between classes, whatever it was. And then Greg provided me with every opportunity to play. So that was a huge help. Whenever I left school, I got a job working on the railroad, and I was out in Arkansas or in Portland, and, you know, working the night shift, flying in the morning of practice, no sleep, this or that, or, you know, missing practice altogether, and my play suffered, and it showed on the field. I didn't get the playing time that I needed to. I'm not going to make excuses for it. I did not perform as well as I should have because of this or that or whatever, and I didn't get to play. So I ended up I've been doing anodizing since I was 16. I did it all through college as like a little side hustle. Did it out of a garage for years and years and years. And luckily, when I was a little fed up with like how my job at UP was going and not getting to play as much as I wanted to play, I had something I could fall back on. So I was like, you know what? I know I've made good money doing this in the past. I know if I go full-fledged on it, I'll make it work. It's kind of the person I am. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well and make it work. You know, no excuses. So we came back, bought a new shop, got bigger and better, hired new people, more people, and just are growing and growing, and, you know, no complaints. And luckily, it allows me to take off for a crawfish boil on a Tuesday randomly, or go play paintball or whatever it is. And, you know, even I can do drills after work. I can do whatever it is. And like kind of like what I mentioned back in college, just holding a gun and touching a gun and moving a gun around. You're always thinking about it. I got 100 guns in my shop right now. I'm always thinking about paintball and how, and it's a good position to be in. You know, find what it's the cliche of find what makes you happy and go for it, but find what you can do well and allows you to live the life you want to live, whether it's be fully online and travel for everything like Harrison does, and he just travels the world playing paintball and it's amazing. Or if, you know, you got to be rooted in a spot like I am, but you get to play every weekend or take off when you need to take off. Or even if it's just, hey, find a field that'll let you come in, you know, a little late, or just do that hour of drills that, you know, might not be worth it, but just spend time behind a paintball gun. That's really what it is. When you, nobody's good at playing paintball, and that's what attracted me to the sport originally, is when you first start, it's such an obscure sport that nobody's good at it. It's a matter of how much effort you put into it. Yeah, being super fast or super this or intelligent or whatever it is helps, but I've seen some really fast, athletic NFL players that look super awkward holding a paintball gun. So it's just a matter of how much
1,000%.
time and effort you can put into it. And Yeah, and you'll grow. So luckily, paintball's one of those sports that's just effort in equals effort out.
Yeah, effort in definitely equals results out for sure. Last question
for sure.
for you, last question for you though, just because I think it's such a cool storyline for you specifically, is that the very first game, it looks like that you guys are going to be playing with Infamous at the very first event, the very first major now here in this new NXL world, you know, playing for the cup, and it's kind of a whole new scenario, is it's going to be against AC Diesel. So, you know, AC Diesel obviously beat you the last time that you played them when you were on AC Dallas. Now with Infamous, and a lot of expectations for Infamous, but I feel like this is kind of one of the very first games right away in the tournament where we're going to kind of get a really good look at the new Infamous and the new AC Diesel to see, you know, who potentially is going to be one of those teams that we need to look at in 2021. I know, look, one game does not a year make, but right out the gate, to me, when I look at this division, I'm like, okay, the Ironman lost Todd. They don't have A-Rod. They, you know, Nick Sloviak is a beast. He just had some surgery on some stuff. He should be okay. But like, and their younger guys are awesome, and their core is still the same. New York Extreme lost Tim Stetzel. They don't have their badass snake player now. They got to reset with that. DMG, we'll see what they got. But, you know, to me, and I look at that, I'm like, okay, Diesel and Infamous, like those two teams could be the best two teams in that division, at least on paper. Again, you know, that's why we shoot the paintballs at each other. But right out the gate, that's what we're going to see. So the last question I have for you before I let you go is, what do you think about that matchup against, you know, some fellow Texans and AC Diesel here at the very first event right out the gate?
Yeah, first point right out the gate, I'm overshooting Mark. I'm telling you right now. It's going to be good. In San Antonio,
there we go.
In San Antonio, we had an overtime match. You know, it was, you know, back and forth the whole time. And what was interesting to see was that both teams were winning through different sides of the field. So it's gonna be a little bit of a bloodbath. You know, it's gonna be a little rowdy, but it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be really evenly matched. I think, you know, we're gonna win by at least one, but it's gonna be a good match to see. Like I said, me playing against some of those guys that I know so many tendencies, and those guys playing against me that just know so many of my tendencies. That's what really makes it interesting, right? And also, those guys have played Infamous so many times at Paintball Fit. Like, those guys, it's no new thing, you know. We're all gonna like lay all of our cards on the table and go for it. So I think it'll be back and forth. What's funny is Diesel, if you watch them play a match, they go radically different throughout the match. And I think that's one of their strong suits. So, you know, a lot of teams might throw a curveball at you, but they always kind of settle into that core play or whatever it may be. The Russians don't, and that's why they have success. Diesel, you don't know really what's going to happen. Clint will play the back center 5 points in a row, and then he'll run to your snake on the break. And that's just the way it is. Luckily, they have attackers that can do a lot. If you see more attackers that, you know, can play that slow game, but also play that, you know, rocket ship off the break, that's what really makes the team interesting. And they have some of those guys. They have some guys that need to develop on that as well. But they have a lot of options, and we have a lot of options. That's what's really going to be interesting about that match. It's just the depth on both teams.
Yeah, and that's, to me, the story for both those squads in 2021 is how good is that depth going to be. We're going to find out at 9 o'clock in the morning on day number 1 of the 2021 season, April 30th here. It is approaching us, so mark your calendars for that. Also, Infamous going to be playing the Ironman in day number 1 as well, too. So that should also be a pretty fun game to watch, because the Ironman have some really young and hungry guys that are still have giant chips on their shoulders, you know, and don't count the Ironman out this year. You know, I know they lost A-Rod. They don't have Todd as a coach, but if you look at some of the younger players that they have on that squad, they are also just chomping at the bit to prove themselves. Payne Tabata could be a beast on the snake side of the field. LJ Parrish is still there. And they still have, you know, Corey Hall out there. They don't have Thomas Kim. But still, it could be a really fun team to watch, not a team you can sleep on. Anyway, Ryan, thank you so much for sitting in with me. Really appreciate your insight into the the complete transition for AC Dallas is going to be interesting for there. Maybe that is one. We're just real quick though. One last question. I know we're running a little long, but I have to ask this though, because it's like, what do you think the next story is, or the next transition is for AC Dallas? I mean, the guys that they're picking up. I mean, what do you think? I have to throw it to you because you're a Texan. That squad. What do you think we're going to see out of AC Dallas this year? Because that's a really big intangible that everyone keeps asking me about. I keep seeing people ask about. No one really knows what we're going to see out of AC Dallas this year. I know it's going to be uphill climb for them. I know they got a brand new squad. Paulie's been good at cultivating talent, but just your thoughts before I let you go.
Yeah, like you said, Greg's had a proven track record of success in remolding teams and bringing new players up, especially younger players. That's kind of his niche, is like the younger players, and molding them into players and letting them have or giving them the ability to do more than what they should be able to do on paper. Setting up the system of like, this is the way AC plays. You don't have to have as much talent to have as much success. As the talent grows, the success just grows even more. But those guys are no slouches. They're not experienced at the high level. But like I mentioned, AC Diesel just playing in a certain amount of paintball. Those guys have played more. Those guys won. I think they mercy ruled every single paintballfit.com was the divisional team name. I think those guys mercy ruled every single team in Division 4 for like every event. And then Division 3, they did really well. I think they won like almost every event, if not every event. Division 2, I think they made Sunday both times. So they're making giant leaps of jumping a division every year, and then also just skip semi-pro. But I mean, I went from Division 4 to semi-pro. They're going from Division 2 to pro. It's not as big of a jump. And when you got a whole core group like the guys like that, nothing's unfathomable by any means. And they're putting in the work too. They're playing a crazy amount of paintball. So they will be very sharp moving into the first event. That's for sure.
They're just, to me, and I know, and I'm with you on all that. I've heard the same thing. It's the biggest intangible, one of the biggest intangibles out there. Because even with the team like Uprising, who, didn't make it to World Cup because of COVID, but they're coming in with basically the same starting roster that they've had for the past 4 years. So it's not really that big of an intangible. We know what we're going to see out of Uprising. They can beat the best teams. I just was doing the voiceover for their, hype piece, and it's like, it's like 16th, 6th, 14th, 4th, 19th. It's like, you never know what you're going to get out of Uprising. We just have no idea what these new dudes are going to do at the pro level. And out the gate's probably going to be rough for them. But that was one of the things, the last question I had to ask you. Anyway, Ryan, thank you so much, man. I'm really happy to see you on Infamous. It was a pleasure to see you come up the ranks on AC Dallas. It's been really fun to watch you play your paintball career so far. I still feel like you got a, badass career in front of you, because you are so hard-nosed and willing to get through whatever you need to do. So it's going to be fun here. So everyone, thank you so much. Definitely check out Arc Anodizing. Anybody you want to thank? Anything you want to send people to before we sign off here?
Yeah, like I said, check us out, Arc Anodizing, on Facebook or Instagram. Let me know if you have anything. We'll get it knocked out. I want to thank Greg, Paulie again, all the guys on AC, and then everyone with my new opportunity on Infamous. It's going to be good. I'm super excited. I haven't been this excited to play paintball in a long time, and I'm super pumped. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, man. Again, mark your calendars at the end of this month, April 30th. We are going to be getting into the very first major here at the NXL. We will continue to bring you guys shows, behind-the-scenes looks, and at the leading lights of the game here, and all their thoughts and what's going on in their minds on the lead up here to the very first event of the year. I'm Matty Marshall. Thank you so much to Ryan Hall, and I'm looking forward to watching you play this year. I'll see you guys next week.